They talked about having Gandolfini at one point replace him. Did you know that?
No.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's hard to believe that The Office has been off the NBC airways since 2013. It's also hard to believe that James Gandolfini has been gone since 2013 as well, passing away tragically of a heart attack. The Office and The Sopranos were two of the most iconic TV shows of the 2000s, and although they were very different in tone, there were similarities. When Steve Carell left The Office in season 7, the series was left without a boss. It was then that NBC turned to Gandolfini. The deal may have happened if it wasn't for a desperate HBO intervening. Before there was Michael Scott, there was David Brent, played by Ricky Gervais, in the original British version of The Office. Brent was a nightmare of a boss, but there was sadness in his awkwardness, as we were shown a lonely man who acted out to compensate for his insecurities. When the American version of The Office was announced, nothing much was expected. It was seen by many as just another American ripoff that wouldn't understand what made the original so magical. Still, there was the casting of The Daily Show's Steve Carell as the David Brent-like Michael Scott to give us hope. Though the first season was a flop, in the second season, Michael found his voice. He was a self-centered idiot, but he became redeemable through the sadness he showed and the way he saw his co-workers as his family. Then, at the height of the show's popularity, Carell decided to leave, making season 7 of The Office his last. Without Michael Scott, the series quickly became lost. The last 2 seasons of The Office have their great moments, but it also began to lose what made it special. A lot of that came from the inability to replace Michael Scott. Instead of settling on one character to carry the weight, The Office turned to several. The boss's chair was filled with the likes of Kathy Bates, James Spader, Catherine Tate, and most famously, Will Ferrell. The Office desperately needed one person to lock in and keep as the new boss at Dunder Mifflin. NBC almost found him in perhaps the biggest TV star of the decade, James Gandolfini. It's impossible to describe just how big The Sopranos was to pop culture. The series might have aired on HBO, but that didn't matter. The fact that it could get away with what a network series could only dream of doing only drew more attention to it. It was more than just another run-of-the-mill mob series, and that's because of Tony Soprano. He could be a cliched mob boss, but he was also emotionally insecure. Over its 6-season run, The Sopranos won 21 Emmy Awards, and its series finale is still one of the most discussed ever. After The Sopranos ended in 2007, James Gandolfini kept working, but nothing could match the show that made him a household name. Then, another household name in Steve Carell left The Office. After that, NBC came calling for Gandolfini. On the Talking Sopranos podcast, hosted by Gandolfini's former co-stars Michael Imperioli and Steve Shrippa, an interview with Ricky Gervais revealed the fact that NBC tried to get James Gandolfini to replace Steve Carell.
Before James Spader and after Carell, they offered Jim, I want to say $4 million to play him for the season, and HBO paid him $3 million not to do it. That's a fact.
James Gandolfini is one of those actors who will always be remembered for one role over everything else. That can be a curse that gets you typecast or leads audiences unable to believe you as anyone else. Gandolfini didn't have that problem. No one could have ever replaced Steve Carell on The Office or made us forget about Michael Scott. But Gandolfini could have created another regional manager who would have carried the series through to its end.